So thanks very much for that introduction. It's really fun to be with you today and to beam in to the presentation this way. Thanks in particular to the mayor, to the whole team that organized this event, so Joanne Milner, Dr. Perlich, Darius Lee, many others I'm sure, and thanks to the library for hosting us today. Just a couple of words about the National League of Cities to begin with. We're the oldest and largest national organization that represents municipal governments throughout the U.S. We're very proud that Salt Lake City has been a member for 17 years, and in fact, Mayor Becker is our second vice president. And we also work in partnership with the Utah League of Cities and Towns, so Kenneth Bullock, to represent all of Utah's local governments on Capitol Hill here in Washington on issues both large and small. So NLC's mission is to strengthen and promote cities as a center of opportunity, of leadership, and of governance. And within that mission, the Institute for Youth Education and Families is a special entity that helps municipal leaders take action on behalf of kids, families, and their communities. So we believe that mayors and city council people, elected leaders, can play a really strong role in supporting families. And since Mayor Menino in Boston helped found the Institute here 15 years ago, we've operated, or at least tried to operate, as an action tank for city officials. So I think we really do value our relationship with Salt Lake City. This spring, Mayor Becker co-hosted the Mayor's Education Reform Task Force at our Congressional Cities Conference, which was a conversation among a group of 15 highly engaged large city mayors about the role of mayors in supporting educators and in partnering with schools. Joanne Milner, the Mayor's Education Director, has been very engaged with us in our Education Policy Advisors Network. That's an invitation-only group of education advisors to the mayors of the 75 largest cities in the country. And through Joanne's work with EPAN, as we call that network, and both school and university partners here in Salt Lake City, we feel like we've really been fortunate to watch the development of the Capital City Education Initiative over the past couple of years. So congratulations to the mayor, to Joanne, and to all of you who've worked so hard to bring this to fruition. And we're thrilled to have Salt Lake City as one of a team of cities working together on student post-secondary success moving forward. I'm really pleased, too, that Catherine Pettit, Kathy, from the Urban Institute's National Neighborhood Indicators Partnership, is able to join us this morning. NNIP, as they're called, have 15 years now of developing and making great use of the kinds of data systems being contemplated here in Salt Lake City. And they do that work all over the country. So they're always a great partner to our members, and I couldn't recommend them more highly as a resource of Dr. Perlich and to the university as you're working to get the Utah Community Data Project up and running. We'll have more to say about NNIP here in a few minutes. This morning's conversation is in a narrow sense about information and data systems, but I wanted to reflect a bit from NLC's many engagements with cities just over the years about how we think about the importance of community data systems and about several important links between information and action. And the first is around the power of information to catalyze that action. And let me give you a quick example. For years, city leaders have worked hard to improve high school graduation rates. They still are doing that work, and they've had some success. The current rate stands just shy of 80% nationally, and it's on an upward trajectory. So more of our students are making it through the back doors of schools with a diploma. The question is, first, we know that a diploma isn't by itself the same kind of ticket to the middle class that it used to be. It's not as sufficient to meet the workforce needs of most of our region's businesses. So more recently, using longitudinal data from area universities, such as the National Student Clearinghouse, and the longitudinal data systems from the field, and led by the work of several foundations like Bill and Melinda Gates and Lumina, mayors have begun looking at what was happening to those students after they left the building. So whether they made it in the front door of a trade school or degree program, and ultimately whether they graduated with some kind of credential that has an economic value. And the results have been really sobering. What we found is that most graduating high school seniors plan to attend some kind of post-secondary education, but a great many of them never apply. And of those that do apply and are accepted, most that are referred to remediation never complete that remediation. Ultimately, a minority of students who enter college complete college. So when mayors and business leaders get information like this, they act. And this slide here is from Louisville in Kentucky. In their analysis, for example, data like this catalyzed the creation of what they call their 55,000 Degrees Initiative, which is a multi-sector partnership that's enlisted the whole community to earn 55,000 more post-secondary degrees by 2020. Second major purpose is to guide investment and allocation of resources. So we know that our communities are not uniform, right, either in their needs or assets. And aggregate statistics like the one that we just reviewed for Louisville can be misleading because most of our strategies for addressing student need in youth development don't operate at a citywide scale. They operate at the scale of a specific neighborhood or a specific school. And so funders, or city councils, in this example here, the Jacksonville Children's Commission, in order to be able to evaluate their impact and make decisions about how they direct their resources, they find that first they need to understand the need at a neighborhood level. Those red triangles on this map indicate schools in Jacksonville that have a non-promotion rate of 10%, so they're high-need schools. These same folks, city council members, funders, need a bird's-eye view of what they have, so they need to map their assets. This isn't the clearest case here, but the areas that are shaded dark on this map have very high after-school participation rates, so they're areas that are saturated with after-school programs. So this map is one part of an ongoing conversation between the Children's Commission and the City Council in Jacksonville about what and where they fund programs, how to prioritize, and whether they can demonstrate impact. So we should come back to this point about how neighborhood-based these questions often are. And please ask Kathy about how chronic absenteeism rates in Oakland vary across schools, for example, and what that's meant in terms of how they understand and they've moved to address the problem. But the underlying point is that the role of data in understanding where our challenges and opportunities lie as a community. So thinking back to the example of student high school graduation and this post-secondary trajectory, and then having enough information to be able to evaluate the story behind those statistics and to direct what are limited resources with a reasonable confidence that they will have impact. So what we're talking about here is applied community data systems as a public resource. And the National League of Cities has had the opportunity to work pretty closely with elected leaders, with United Ways, with universities, and many others to try to move the needle on different issues related to the well-being of youth, families, and communities. And it's been our experience that where resources like what's being envisioned as the Utah Community Data Project exist, those partnerships are often able to move much faster, much further than those communities without. So it's one of the reasons that we're so grateful for the work that Kathy and NNIP do in working so closely with these 37 partners they have to strengthen these local systems. And it's led us to think about, at the League, what we mean when we say community data system. What are some of the defining characteristics of those that have been most useful to the work of mayors and their partners? And so I want to offer three here just briefly. And the first principle is that this infrastructure should generally not be project specific. It's a substantial investment in a resource that once built can serve multiple purposes. So there's an issue of scale here. Dr. Perlich, I don't doubt, would tell us most of the work is in finding an administrative home, gathering and cleaning and linking data sets from federal, state, and local sources, creating some kind of interface to expose this information in ways that's useful to all of you. So all of that work having been done, this is likely to be as useful a resource for researchers as for policymakers, as useful a resource for transportation planners as educators. Second principle is that while its development and sustainability depends on the contribution and support of leaders and organizations that probably do have policy agendas, it's very important in our view for this repository itself to be located and positioned as what we call data Switzerland. So you've heard the joke, in God we trust, all others must bring data. Well, we want to be really sure, right, that we have the ability to trust that data. And partly because that trust is so important, and it generally comes from the relationship that you have with the University of Utah, Dr. Perlich and her staff, and the confidence that you have in that their knowledge of the region. In our experience, it's really important that community data systems like this be locally owned and operated. So Salt Lake City does have peers who've taken some steps further down this path. Briefly, I just want to mention a couple of them. Providence Plan is an independent nonprofit and member of this network that Kathy runs in Providence that has integrated a tremendous amount of data across health, human services, and education. They're a core member of that region's Children and Youth Cabinet. They produce these interactive data stories, as they call them, to introduce policymakers and others to issues related to things like chronic absenteeism, substance abuse, and several other issues in a different context. And they played a key role in the state's successful application for federal and philanthropic grants, including winning both of the first two rounds of Race to the Top. The second example here is Philadelphia's Policy Analysis Center, which uses a slightly different model, having moved a very sophisticated research database from the University of Pennsylvania into City Hall. where it's been integrated with the city's Health and Human Services database. So Philadelphia commissioners are now setting their research agenda and commissioning quick turnaround reports directly related to policies on their desk for consideration. And this is a big deal for them. And the third, San Francisco, similarly, has integrated administrative records on clients across mental health, child welfare services, and juvenile justice to get a better sense of what the risk and protective factors are for youth and to help educators and caseworkers intervene more quickly and effectively where this multi-system perspective indicates that there's likely to be some trouble. So we published a recent article on this through the Kennedy School, and this points to, I think, the increased capacity of these community data systems, though how precisely they each develop is always very much subject to your own vision and your goals, right? So in closing, I wanted to say again how excited we are about the Capital City Education Initiative and the great work that the mayor and his staff and partners are leading around this issue of post-secondary success. It's a really important issue. I'd expect that the Utah Community Data Project would be a strong support of that work, just as community data systems have been in Providence and many other communities. And I trust that as NLC can be useful to you, you'll reach out to us for help. You help facilitate a municipal data network, which is a conversation among a couple dozen cities working on exactly these kinds of issues all across the country. But by way of segue here, I think that among your strongest allies here is the Urban Institutes Network, NNIP, to whom we regularly turn as a resource. So let me introduce our next speaker, Kathy, and I'll turn it over to her. I've mentioned that Kathy directs the National Neighborhood Indicators Partnership. It's a collaborative of now 37 local partners that work to further the development and use of neighborhood-level information systems in local policymaking and community building. Kathy is a recognized expert on local and national data systems useful in housing and urban development research and program development. She's a senior research associate in the Metropolitan Housing and Community Policy Center at the Urban Institute. So Kathy, wonderful you can be with us today. Take it away.
Great, thanks Chris, and I really appreciate being invited and included on this really exciting event. As Chris mentioned, I direct the National Neighborhood Indicators Partnership, otherwise known as NNIP, and I'm also a senior researcher at the Urban Institute, a policy research organization here in DC. So for the presentation today is really in two parts. First, to talk about the network and our partners, and the second half give you some specific examples that illustrate how NNIP works on the ground. So NNIP was launched in 1995 with 6 original partners, and now we're up to 37 cities. All the partners have in common that they build and operate neighborhood-level information systems using local administrative data. And the success that they've achieved over the past 15 years really has required 3 components. One is trusted local institutions. The second, of course, is the obvious high-quality data. And the third is really a mission about using that data for community action. So I'm going to walk through each of those going forward. To start out with the institutional side, our partners are housed in various types of organizations, universities, independent nonprofits, local funders, but whatever the home, they are all respected organizations with a really long-term stake in their community. They're viewed as neutral players, not tied to one political agenda or issue area. So this way, the data providers can be confident that confidential data will be handled properly, and audiences are confident of the rigor of the analysis that's presented. And since they're on the ground, they're also responsive to local needs and emerging issues that come up. Our partners that you can see here together form an amazing network for peer learning. There's really a rich base of knowledge to draw from, and it allows new cities like Salt Lake City or existing partners tackling new issues to really get a jump start on any given issue from others' past experiences. So the relevant and high-quality data is the obvious component here. We wouldn't be possible without this access. And the local data is more important than ever as the Census Bureau has switched from the long form every 10 years to the 5-year averages and less precise numbers from the American Community Survey for neighborhood data. So our partners go to the police department to negotiate for crime data, the schools to negotiate for education data, health, housing, etc. They add value by cleaning the data and really creating more intuitive neighborhood level indicators from the raw files. And this isn't viewed as just a one-time project, but they negotiate formal agreements to get the data recurrently, which means the data is going to be ready when the need arises. And I think has come up in the event today that neighborhood level is really key, since the problems aren't evenly distributed across cities, and each neighborhood may have a different issue that's the really top priority for them. The other really unique aspect we think of NNIP is to cover a wide range of topics. So residents don't experience their community in silos. You don't think about high-quality schools and safe neighborhoods and great parks all separately. They're in a package of your neighborhood. So and making things better aren't the solutions aren't siloed either. For example, in the for obesity, you might have to worry about, is it safe to walk on the streets, or are there sidewalks, or is there access to healthy food? So our partners, in the end, their work results in a one-stop shop that is a really flexible resource for the whole community, and it's much more cost-effective than each nonprofit group or government agency trying to do all this work themselves. There's a real economy of scale. And the data development is a long-term process. The systems are built incrementally. The partners really have the perspective of that this is investment in infrastructure. This requires commitment both from the partner organizations and their funders and the data providers to grow and support the systems over time. So the third part, and of course the most important, is the motivation for all this hard work of compiling the data, policy making, community building, program planning. And the founding NNIP partners started all this because they saw that not everyone had equal access to information. And since our focus is still on this original purpose, on low-income neighborhoods that have traditionally not had access to data or the skills to use it on their own behalf. But as NNIP partners matured and the systems developed, they were also needed to help citywide nonprofits, government agencies, all types of groups to find and use the data in their work. So now they have a really wide range of audiences. Some of the most compelling stories from our partners are where data has been used to break down silos, either among agencies, sectors, and geographies. It really is a really spur for more collaboration. Data brings people to the table. They develop a common understanding of a given issue, and new solutions emerge. And a great example of this is our school readiness project, where local partners gathered data and indicators about young children in the community and did an environmental scan of all the pieces of the system, health, school system, child care, child advocates, and brought everyone to the table to talk about, how were their young kids doing, and what could they do to improve the outcomes. So on the day-to-day activities, I talked a little bit about the assembly and transformation of the data is the basic piece, and I think the New Salt Lake City system is a great example of this kind of work. But then the hard work is getting the data used for change. Some of the examples are simple enough about just using the data to target limited resources to the most needy area, really setting priorities. Another example is supporting federally funded neighborhood initiatives like Sustainable Communities or Promised Neighborhoods. With this data infrastructure in place, a community can more easily show on the tight time frame of a grant application both the need for the program and its ability to really have a data-driven approach. So our partners have been very competitive in these competitions, federal competitions. And the third example is about developing comprehensive community indicators projects. And this is really the deliberate selection of key indicators to assess the quality of life, along with a cross-sector review of indicators across topics every year or 2 years. Beyond any of these specific topics, there are really broader goals also. Our partners work to improve the overall ability of the sectors in the community to access the data they need and the skills on how to use it. They also work to just raise the expectations about the access to quality information for the investment decisions made every day. So it's really about changing the environment in addition to making the specific project level work. So I'm going to move on to some examples here. The first example is from Memphis, the Center for Community Building and Neighborhood Action there. And the city had assumed that the properties with the worst blight would be those ones in foreclosure, here in red, and planned their code enforcement strategy with that in mind, putting those properties first. Our partner thought that this might not be true and designed a survey on property conditions, trained students and neighborhood residents to collect the information for each home in this pilot neighborhood that you see here. The map shows the overlay of the resulting data. The hatched pattern shows the problem properties, and the aqua outline shows the vacant ones. So you can see that there's many blighted homes not in foreclosure. And this new data really showed that the foreclosure status was not the right way to prioritize city actions, and started a conversation about other ways to decide which homes to inspect first. The next example is from Washington, D.C., the Promise neighborhood there, Kenilworth. And our partners in D.C. mapped the child care location and quality level of the centers and whether they were home-based. You can see the goal of high-quality early education is one of the features of the Promise neighborhood work. And this was one step to getting to the pieces they need to really create program goals. But the admin data wasn't enough. There was more work to be done, including more qualitative work around do the families in the neighborhood use the child care facilities in the neighborhood? How strong are the curriculums? What kind of programs do the families need, et cetera? So it's a good, it was a combination of administrative data and local knowledge. The last short example I have is from Kansas City. Our partner there, the Mid-Atlantic Regional Council, is one of the top performers in the HUD DOT Sustainable Communities grantees. And they're working on economic development around 6 commercial corridors really tied to transit improvements. And Mark is a great example of really tackling local problems with a regional perspective. And this example is a page from their implementation guidebook, which identified indicators and outcomes for their initiative so they could track success as their program proceeded. And this is really one of the broader examples of the emphasis on outcomes and performance measures that really is affecting all of our partners. So I'm just going to go a little in depth on an example from Oakland to give credit to Urban Strategies Council and Steve Spiker there for many of these slides. They've been working to reduce chronic absenteeism in Oakland, and absenteeism is directly related to academic performance. Obviously, kids can't learn if they're not in school to begin with. It's also related to delayed graduation and dropping out altogether, and it's really a perfect issue for NNIP because there's a variety of reasons for kids not attending school. Their health, unreliable transportation, lack of childcare for younger siblings. So addressing the issue requires a really broad perspective and needs to look beyond the silo of the school system itself for solutions. So we'll start here with a simple bar graph about the percent of kids who were chronically absent in Oakland in 2009. And this is defined as children missing 10% or more of the school days. And you can see that it's about 9% overall. And they started to sort of disaggregate this, figure out who's affected. You can see particularly African Americans and kids in special education programs have much higher rates than others. So this was the beginning of sort of tailoring responses. The next thing they did was break this out to find out which schools were affected. So you can, from this table, 22 schools had more than 20% of their students chronically absent in this school year. And one of the really innovations of the movement to fight absenteeism in the past few years is to focus on elementary school kids that miss school. So these might be excused absences, but they're still missing quite a lot of school, as you can see here. And Finally, there's a map here. So this is the percent of elementary students who were chronically absent by census tract. So this is built off of the student level data about where the kids lived. And you can see up in the top left-hand corner a cluster of neighborhoods with a lot of kids missing school. So the root of the problem might differ neighborhood by neighborhood. By understanding the patterns and what the neighborhood contexts are, you can start to tailor the intervention to fit that context. Finally, I just wanted to share a screenshot, an example of moving from raw data systems to relevant information. And this is a snapshot of a report format that Urban Strategies and the school system delivered together to help principals in the central office pinpoint emerging attendance problems. And the actual numbers aren't important, but you can see across the top, the indicator is the percent of kids in school 90% or more of the scheduled school days, and it tracks it week by week for each school, and there's some easy color coding to highlight those falling below the threshold. So this really shows the importance of ongoing monitoring. They found that even within 6 weeks of the school year, 12% of the African American students had already missed 10% of the possible school days. So we didn't want to wait till May to find out which children were having the problem. So after the data analysis, they wanted to take a step back and figure out what to do about their findings. And by the school sharing the data with another organization, they learned a lot about the collection and data quality issues that they started to address. They also created systems like the report I showed you to review the data and really identify kids earlier in the process. They had recognized that they really needed to build up a culture of attendance about expectations and rewards from the teachers. But they realized also that it's not, as I said in the beginning, it's not only a school problem, and they needed to really integrate parents and students' viewpoints and figuring out what the problems were to be able to decide how to tackle the absenteeism in the city. And nonprofits were a great resource to start helping the families overcome the barriers to attending school. So in this example, our partners could provide neutral data, policy expertise, and connections to community to really start a citywide conversation and movement about how to tackle absenteeism in their city. So I just wanted to point out a resource here. This is our website, www.neighborhoodindicators.org. And in particular, you might find the issues areas page useful, where you can really dive in and see examples from all of our partners around topics, absenteeism, but also health and housing and environment and a range of other topics. So thanks again for including NNIP in your day. We're really excited about the work you're doing to improve the use of data in programs like the Capital City Education Campaign, but also the broader information infrastructure, and we hope that the lessons from NNIP can help.